Hello and welcome to Ryno Sports Talk episode 7. And it's about to be February, so it's been 2 full months of these podcasts, and I'm really enjoying it so far. So, on to episode 7. So, the first topic, I got 5 topics here I'm going to talk about. First one is the championship series in the NFL. So, the NFC Championship and the AFC Championship. And I guess I'm going to go in chronological order here. And if you haven't really heard it, well, before I get into that, if you haven't seen it, the Pro Bowl's this week, and I wrote an article about how to fix it because it's kind of boring and stupid and not very entertaining and not very good game and kind of overrated and stuff. So if you haven't read that, go read it. Links in the description there. So we're going to move on to the NFC and AFC Championship, starting with the AFC, obviously. And this was a really good game. It was between the Patriots and Broncos. And I guess the real key of the game was the Broncos had the lead the whole game. I didn't really realize this as I was watching it, but they were leading the whole game, which is always a good thing. But it kind of showed that the Broncos are vulnerable on defense a little bit, because Patriots had over 300 total yards on the Broncos defense, and that's really good. And it looked a lot like the first game that they had, where it was just the Patriots doing their thing on offense, and they couldn't really run it. Broncos kind of ran it. They only had 99 yards, so that's not very good. About the same penalty-wise, about the same amount of time possessed. What was really key there was the Patriots had 2 turnovers, the Broncos 1, and also the Broncos defense they hit Tom Brady 20 times in that game, and that's always a good thing if you can get to one of the legends and create some chaos, hurry him, hit him, sack him, do whatever you really need to do. And if you can get to Brady and do that, you're going to have a lot better game. And who really did that the best, in my opinion, was Von Miller. He had 2.5 sacks, interception as well. Really early in the game, that was a really key interception for them, in my opinion. And so did Darian Stewart. He had one a little bit later on a kind of a duck that Tom Brady threw, and he kind of just jumped in front of it, grabbed it, picked it off. So that was really good. I think the defense looked really sharp that game. They had 4 sacks total. Derek Wolfe looked really good too, and a bunch of tackles. About everyone got in on that, and I think the defense is set for next week and all that kind of good stuff. It looks really good. The only thing that worries me for the Super Bowl is Manning and the offense. Yeah, he did have 176 yards on 32 attempts in a cold day for Denver, but what really emerged to me was Owen Daniels. He had 2 catches, both for touchdowns, for 33 yards and 3 targets. He's a premium red zone threat with Demaryius not really doing anything. Demaryius had 2 catches for 12 yards on 7 targets, so he needs to step up his game a little bit. Emmanuel Sanders was good, as always, and what really sticks out to me is the Broncos had 8 different guys catch a pass, and that's really good. You have different variety, different guys catching, doing stuff, moving the ball, and all that good stuff. You can't really guard them. They're kind of like the Cardinals, where you have a bunch of different wide receiver options to throw to. But the big thing for the next week is, can the Broncos get a rushing attack going? They didn't do very well against the Patriots. They did have 99 yards, like I said, but a lot of it that they still had they had 30 rushes exactly for 90 yards, so it wasn't really that good. C.J. Anderson did average 4.5 per rush, which it's pretty good. He did rip off a 30-yarder, so that's always a good thing. I don't really see the Broncos, unless they get really balanced on offense, I should say, doing that much in respect to what the Panthers can do. So it's going to be more of a defensive battle is what they're going to have to hope for. So we're going to see what their plan is for going into the Super Bowl. And they had a good plan against the Patriots, and the Steelers. So let's see what Kubiak and whoever the Gase can come up with. Not Gase. I don't know who the offensive coordinator is anymore, but see what they come up with, and then that's how you can judge the Super Bowl. But now moving on to the NFC Championship. The NFC Championship was pretty one-sided in my opinion. You had Cam Newton throw for 300 yards and a bunch of different receivers catch for a bunch of yards, but like what happened last week and a couple games before that with the Panthers, they jumped out to a huge lead in the first half, going up 17-0 off of a Ted Ginn run and then a Corey Brown pass, both two speedsters, and I'll talk about the Super Bowl here in a little bit. And then you see the Cardinals, score to start the second half. Well, not start it. There's about 5 minutes left in the second quarter, and then Cam Newton responded right back, led the team down. He got another touchdown. Third quarter came. They scored 2 more times, 1 field goal, 1 run. Carson Palmer threw for a touchdown in the fourth. It was really over. Made it 34-15, and then kind of Carolina put the exclamation point on by having a 5-yard pass from Newton to Devin Funchess with the 2-point on top, and then Kuechly had a interception return to end the game with 5 minutes left. So what really stands out to me in that one is the Panthers defensively did a lot of good stuff, and they had, I think it was 4 interceptions of Carson Palmer. That's not really expected from this defense. I mean, yeah, their linebackers and line are really good, but their corners outside of Norman aren't very insanely good. And then if you look at the Arizona side of the ball, Palmer didn't really throw it really well. He had 230 on 40 attempts with 1 touchdown, 4 picks, like I said. And who really caught the ball, when you really think about the Cardinals, they had I'd say at least 3 top-tier receivers in John Brown, Fitzgerald, and Floyd. And then you'd have Javen Brown and J.J. Nelson and, well, Fells is a tight end, but Nelson and Javen Brown being a little second tier, like they'd be 2 or 3s on other teams, and they're 4 and 5. So you thought they'd have the type of offense to exploit the Carolina defense, and they couldn't do it that way. So their defense obviously is going to be really good for this game. So I think it'll be more of a defensive matchup just because of how good both the Carolina and Denver defense is. And with the Panthers, they were really balanced this week. They had 300 yards passing, like I said, and then 150 rushing. So that's another thing to watch in that Super Bowl too, is can the Broncos contain Cam Newton? Can they contain Fozzie Whitaker and Jonathan Stewart and all those guys that run it a lot? And Ted Ginn too, he kind of just showed up, 1 rush for 22 yards kind of thing. That's not really impressive, but still. And then what are they going to do with Olsen and Brown? Or I guess Brown kind of just showed up this week too. But I think this is going to be one of the better Super Bowls we're going to watch or see in the past couple of years, only because of how defensive these two teams are and kind of the lack of offense. Well, Carolina obviously has an explosive offense, but it's not really consistent. Like, they scored a bunch during Seattle, but it was mainly Cam Newton running it, or their defense. And then during the Cardinals, they scored a bunch on offense and had 1 defensive touchdown, and that's not really typical for them. So I'm going to write a little piece coming up next week with storylines, predictions, what to look for, all that good jazz, kind of not backgroundy, but more of me from being a former football player, kind of what I'm going to watch on that. Not really in-depth like ESPN or any of them, but maybe more fan relatable. So look forward to that next week, and I'm going to move on to the next topic. So this week was a pretty big week for the NBA, and the reason I say that is because their NBA All-Star rosters were announced first with the starters and then the reserves. I thought it was kind of interesting. What I saw, at least, I kind of follow the Western Conference a little bit more than the East. I follow a little bit more of players than teams because I'm not a huge NBA guy, and I've started to notice a couple things, and I'm going to talk about that just a little bit with another hot take thing that you're going to want to listen to. It's going to be really interesting. I think it's a really good topic that a lot of people are trying to think about and are considering nowadays. So, but staying on topic at this All-Star of the All-Star rosters announced, the 5 starters for the Western Conference are Kobe, Stephen Curry, Kevin Durant, Kawhi Leonard, and Russell Westbrook. And if you paid attention to those real quick, you hear 3 guards and 2 forwards, I guess is what they're called now. And it's not true. Kobe was actually the front court player. He was the 3rd front court selected. So that's how that works. But I'm going to break it down just a little bit more there. So like I said, Kobe Bryant was a top vote getter. He was a small forward, or I guess I call it front court now, and he was the top vote getter over Stephen Curry, Durant, all them. And that's kind of saying something. They want Kobe to go out with a all-star appearance and big game, whatever. And I think that's a great thing for him. He can do that. I'm going to write more of a piece on that later. Although, and I'll talk about some more snubs on the reserves and stuff like that later. But I think that's a great thing for him to go out with a start, since he did announce that is his last game. Moving on to Stephen Curry, the starting point guard. I assume, well, he just said backcourt. Starting backcourt player, Stephen Curry. He's having a great year. He's sitting out most of the fourth quarters. I think he sits out like 7. He sat out like 13 or 14 or whatever it was. It's a pretty large amount. I think it's like 25% of the games he sat out the fourth quarter, because him and his team have put up that much points. And I think that's a good thing. He's obviously one of the best players with his three-point shooting, his dribbling ability, all that. I don't agree with it because he's the future of the league, but the future is a little bit too early, and I'm going to get into that when I say players, when I talk about my hot topic here in a little bit. So, enough about him. On to Kevin Durant, the second front court player selected. He is very deserving. I think he's been in the All-Star game a lot since he got drafted, and I think he's having a little bit down year, at least by his standards, because he's not really talked about. He's still averaging really good 20s, 2010s, kind of average, like Durant's supposed to, hitting a bunch of threes like he always does, scoring, leading his team to victories, all that stuff. So he deserves to be in there. I'm going to skip Kawhi Leonard for just a second, and then I'm going to come back to him. So I'm going to talk about Russell Westbrook real quick, another he's backcourt, and I don't think that this is a great selection for them. Obviously, he's deserving of it. He's one of the stars of the game, and all that stuff. And I'm going to talk about that in a different topic about the NBA. So I have 2 different things. One's more general sports, and one's specifically about the NBA, and so on. But I do think he deserves it just because of his star power. He brings a little bit more show to the game. He's a dunker. He's a slasher. He's not really a three-point shooter or shooter in general, but he's still good no matter what. I think he deserves into it. He's averaging just behind Kevin Durant in the 20s and leading his team to victories, all that stuff. Take exactly what I said about Durant, say it about Russell Westbrook, and take out the great three-point shooting part. And then you can add in Steph Curry's handles and all that stuff. He's just kind of a flashy player, and he deserves to be there just because he adds a little bit of flair to the game. Maybe not as a starter, but who knows? There's not many real good guards in the Western Conference, at least elite level guards like Westbrook and Curry. So, like I said, I'm gonna switch back to Kawhi Leonard real quick. I'm just going off the list on NBA.com, and that was the order they were in. So I'm gonna skip over and go back to Kawhi right now. I think this is his first All-Star starter selection. I know he's been in the All-Star game the past 2 years. He's very deserving of this starter because he knows, like, he's one of the better defenders in the league. He can guard about anyone. He showed that 2 years ago in the finals when he guarded LeBron and did a great job with him and all that stuff. He's a great defender. He's a great all-around offensive playmaker too. I think he could become one of the elite Kevin Durant style guys here in the near future. I don't know quite yet if he's there or not, but I don't know. I think he's going to be, he's an up and comer. Right? He's really going to be really good in the coming years. So Moving on to the Eastern Conference starters, we got Carmelo Anthony, Paul George, LeBron James, Kyle Lowry, and Dwayne Wade. 4 of those guys, everyone but Lowry, so Melo, Paul George, LeBron James, and D Wade. Almost every year they're going to get elected there. It seems like they've been there like eight years in a row. Each of them, like ever since they were all in the same draft except for Paul George, obviously. But the Melo, LeBron, and Wade were, so every year they've been selected to the starter. So I don't really need to talk about them. They're 3 of the better guys in the league. Everyone but Melo's won the NBA championship. They're all putting up big stats. Yada yada, play on big teams, big names, all that stuff. So but Paul George, he's a really good selection for this too. He's as well known as LeBron and them, but he's not on their level yet, especially after breaking his leg so bad in the Team USA a couple years ago. But good for him. He deserves to be in that, and I think he's going to be a great guy on that team. The guy I really want to focus on here is Kyle Lowry. He was selected. It was hosted in Toronto this year, and I think Lowry's going to be a good pick for them because he's really a big athletic guard. He can match up with. He's not big. He's like 6'3" or 6'4", so he's Steph Curry's size, but a little bit muscular, and kind of plays more athletic. He plays like a Russell Westbrook in a Steph Curry body, so that's always good. And he just brings a lot of good stuff, and it's a good thing that he plays on the Raptors that are playing Toronto, so they have the Toronto player there, the big name from Toronto, and all that stuff. So I think that's good for both the NBA, Toronto, and Kyle Lowry. He's really deserving of it. So I'm just going to breeze through the reserves real quick. For the West, you got Draymond Green, James Harden, Chris Paul, Klay Thompson, Anthony Davis, DeMarcus Cousins, and LaMarcus Aldridge. So I just want to talk about Draymond Green and Cousins real quick. Draymond Green is basically the MVP of the Warriors. He brings a lot of hustle, rebounding, the three-pointer off the bench, all that stuff. And he's not better than Curry, but he does so much more than Curry for the Warriors that it's kind of overlooked. And I believe he's a little bit better than Curry just because of all the different stuff he does. But no one really looks at him because he's not the big flashy three-pointer. He's a big rah-rah guy, and all those upbringing kind of like brings everyone together kind of thing, big teammate guy and all that stuff. So good. That's a great thing for him to get in there. He really deserves that. And I think he's one of the better guys in the league, at least skill-wise and teammate-wise and all that. And then with DeMarcus Cousins, or Boogie, as he's known, he's been tearing it up this year. He's looking for – he's on the Kings, and the Kings aren't really good. But he's been putting up I think it was 200 points in the last 4 games as of today, the 29th, and all that. But he's still really good. He's a big center. He's what the league was, but they don't want to leave him up. But he's only 25, so I think this is his 3rd All-Star game, and he should be going to more soon. And I think that's great for him. He's a good big defender, good big offensive big man too, and it's great for him. And I think he's going to do really well in the near future, and I think this is more of a showcase for the Kings to try and trade him for someone good, since he's not really meshing with George Karl or anything like that. And he's not really a good fit for the team because the team's trying to rebuild, but they can't rebuild him around him, and a bunch of other stuff. I don't really know all the details on that. Moving on to the East real quick, you got Jimmy Butler, DeMar DeRozan, Paul Millsap, Andre Drummond, Chris Bosh, John Wall, and Isaiah Thomas. I think this is great for Isaiah Thomas because he was a 60th pick overall a couple of years ago, and now he's the overlooked little guy who's in the All-Star game. He's going to ball out in that game, I guarantee it. Same with Jimmy Butler, who was kind of the second guard to D Rose a couple of years ago, and now he's starting to take it over. He's known for his work ethic and all this stuff, and it's just kind of amazing to me that he can put in all this work and still get overlooked, and that shows just how good he is now that he's an all-star. So, a couple of snubs. I got 3 here. You got Dirk. He's still really good as always, and this might be one of his last years. So I think him, Kobe, and another one I'm going to mention is Duncan wasn't on that list. So do with that what you want, but I think Tim Duncan should be on that list still. Same with Dirk. You put all 3 of those out there at the same time. That's a huge moment for 3 older guys in the league. show them all three great respect. I think that they're all three legends in this game, and maybe not Jordan, all three of them, but still really maybe like a MJ or not MJ, Magic Johnson and all that stuff, but maybe not top tier, but they should be up near in the top 15 at least. And then another one, my last one I'm going to talk about is Rajon Rondo. He leads the league in assists right now. He's averaging 11 a game, and that's his career high too. And I think that's more of how he got suspended earlier in the year, and he did a bunch of. He's not really a big name. Well, he's still a big name, but he's not really like a good name to put out there. He's got suspended. He's a bad boy and all that stuff, but I still think they got it right with the All-Star rosters for the most part, outside of Dirk and Duncan. But maybe if a couple of guys get hurt or want to drop out or something like that, they can get those two guys in there. So that's all for the NBA All-Stars. That's who they are. That's my opinion on them. That's who I think got snubbed. I guess I'm going to move on to another topic here, and that is, so I alluded to this the last video about the All-Star ballot. I kind of left it a secret for a reason, and I made a video about this with about the NFL, I should say, and it kind of got a lot of views on it, and I was just expecting a little bit more of some comments and different kind of stuff, and I saw someone did comment and asked to do about the NBA, and I kind of touched on it last week, but I didn't really know what they wanted to do with that, so I'm going to finish out. This is the NBA rigged? And obviously that's more of a controversial thing, and it kind of really starts, speaking of All-Star, with that being voted now, or not voted, but selected now. People start talking, oh, it's just a popularity contest and all this stuff. And it is. It's a huge popularity contest because you leave it out to the fans to elect the top 5 starters, and then you get the coaches and players to vote on the next, fill out the bench, the next 7, I guess. And everyone that says it's a popularity contest, it really is. And same with the dunk contest and 3-point and not the Rising Stars, but all the other contests during this week, and every other All-Star game is the exact same way. You got the MLB, get guys that are hitting like, I can't remember who it was now, but it was like some guy was hitting 200, and he was about to be selected the top AL second baseman from the Royals. But that's kind of where I wanted to start with this one. That's why I chose to talk about this one now, because I knew the roster would be announced this past week and all that. So with that, I mean, as I think about it, there's usually the same 12 guys elected every year, and like I mentioned it when I talked about the East, how it's the same 3 guys every year. You got Melo, you got LeBron, and you got Dwayne Wade, no matter how good or bad they're playing. And I mean, they're still really good, and it's more of a sign of respect to them, but they're not really playing at the elite level like they have been in the past. I mean, same with Kobe, too. I mentioned it. I straight up said it. I was like, this is more of a he's retiring thing, and this is his last year. They're going to put him out, make him go out with style, be an all-star, be all that stuff. And that's not really a bad thing. Make him an all-star, as long as he doesn't get like the true MVP or the true offensive of the year or whatever those, like, doesn't get a real award outside of maybe the MVP of the All-Star Game award. But if he shoots like he is in the regular season, he has nothing to worry about. He's not going to get it anyways. But if I go back to the rigged part, if you really think about it, people are saying, oh, the NBA is going to the three-pointer, they're going to this and all that stuff. The three-pointer has only been around for, I think, like 40 years or something like that. I'm not too keen on my NBA history of rules and such, but why now? Why are we going just now to move away from the big thing about, like, why are we moving away from big men, and why are we moving away from power forwards and all that stuff, like feeding it to the post kind of thing? Why are we now going to the three-point line? and shooting 3-pointers and stuff. And that made me start thinking, like, obviously we got the call of fouls, and like more fouls are called a game, and I'm going to talk about that more in a little bit. But you also have the refs like Tim Donahue, I don't know how to say it, and that are saying like, oh yeah, I called fouls to get the thing up, to get the over under up or down or whatever you want to, whatever he did. He's openly admitting he cheated to the game to make the game appease him for his gambling, and it's not really met with any backlash at the moment. Maybe back then when if I first admitted it, he did, but I wasn't really big in NBA then. And I mean, that's always a big thing. And I want to talk about I'm going to leave that there just because, like, that's the first part of it being rigged. You got to have someone on the inside rigging it. But like the Warriors, where did they come from? They came from a bunch of. They're a great story. You got Draymond Green, you got Harrison Barnes, you got Curry, Thompson, Bogut, all those guys that are drafted in their system, drafted by their team, all that, like basically homegrown talent. Not really homegrown, but kept in their house, brought in by their draft, all that stuff. And I think they only had 2 or 3 outside helps, like getting trades or something. Like they got Iguodala, and they may have got a couple of pieces like Brandon Rush or Glenn Davis. I don't know, they don't have Glenn Davis. But anyways, how does this team that's got a great story, got all that great story stuff, and then going up against the powerhouse of LeBron, who's been there for 5 years, and then the Warriors win it? Obviously they outplayed them, but was there someone saying, hey, LeBron's going to put up 40, JR got to miss a lot, you got to have these Warriors win it, usher in the new millennium kind of thing? And this is a little bit harder with the NBA, because it's obviously, if you're good like Curry, he can hit a shot from about anywhere on the floor, it seems like, at least. And then there's, like, if you compare Curry to the NFL, I guess the closest thing I'm trying to think of, like, it'd be like a revolutionary type of quarterback guy. So I really hate saying this, but he's more of an RG3 or Kaepernick kind of he kind of compares to RG3 and Kaepernick, because they're supposed to be these revolutionary running dual threat quarterback. Cam Newton, that's the best comparison right there. They're these running quarterback, revolutionary NBA player doing something that's not really expected to be done a lot, where he's shooting 9 threes a game or whatever. And then you got Cam Newton, who's revolutionary and running a bunch and has a huge arm too, not just a pocket passer kind of thing. But that's kind of hard to compare those two, because in the NFL you can say, be like, hey Cam Newton, or hey Cam, overthrow your guy, make sure he doesn't catch, make sure these balls aren't catchable, look like don't look like your normal self, but make it look close, and then throw like 3 picks or whatever. And then in the NBA you could be like, hey Steph, miss these shots. But a lot of it's more of luck with the NBA, because like he could be like, because you got to make it look right. If you got the right shot and you're just missing the shot, that's harder to do. Like, missing on purpose is harder to do than overthrowing a target on purpose. And like, obviously making it look real. Obviously, like, you could miss by just throwing it hard at the backboard kind of thing, but making it look like an actual real shot compared to overthrowing your guy is a lot harder to do as shooting the shot. And that's where I think that the NBA is not as rigged as the NFL, if you can say it's rigged. I mean, yeah, these guys get tired and all that, but I don't really see like coaches being like, hey, say for example the Thunder, hey Durant, Russell, you're coming off the court. Coach, we're down by 10. I don't care. You guys are coming off the court. We only got like a minute left to score. Nah. Or we're down by 4. Durant, Westbrook coming off the floor. Whereas in like the NFL, you can say a guy went down with a knee injury and put in his quarter or the backup and stuff. In my honest opinion, I don't think any sports are rigged. The NBA is just a lot harder to do it because there's a certain amount of luck involved. I mean, defensively, you can be like, hey Kyrie, you're gonna grab get a bunch of steals off Curry today, make him look bad, make this game go 6, or make this say they're in the finals, be like, hey, make this series go 6, and we'll give you a certain amount of money, kind of thing. But it's just not as easy in the NBA, in my opinion, as I'm thinking about it, as the NFL would be. So, as I hope that neither of these are rigged, it kind of makes more sense with the NFL because you got the storylines throughout their offseason, you got how easy it is to throw a game kind of thing. Whereas the NBA, they don't really control anything yet. They got no real major market. Where the NFL's this, they bring in like $100 billion a year kind of market. They bring in, it's probably a lot more than that, but they bring in a bunch of money, and then the NBA's like, yeah, we make about half that, maybe a quarter. I don't even know. I don't know what the revenues are. And it's harder to do, but I still think that if any sports league it's the NFL because it's easier. But the NBA it's possible with the NBA just because of how polarizing the players are. I mean, I've heard it from a bunch of guys that like, hey, let's go and be like Steph Curry and shoot some threes and all this stuff. You can make people think about Steph Curry and try and be like Steph Curry, emulate him, make jersey sales. And like, it's a lot of these it's more of hype, I guess, than rigging, where they're like take LeBron for instance. He was coming out of high school, he was next MJ, all this stuff, and then he was the like alpha dog, top prospect, top everything, best player in the world kind of stuff. And then you got Steph Curry, who was like I don't even think he was like a 3 or 4 star coming out of high school, and then he's like the underdog, undervalued, small guy. It's just kind of they're trying to force people toward gravitating, try and draw people in. That's what I'm trying to get at, and they're doing a good job of it because I think a lot of people can relate more to the new I guess era of Steph Curry, Thompson, John Wall, Bradley Beal, all that stuff, and I think that's more of what they're doing than being rigged. But you never know. I could be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if they were rigged. But I guess it's a lot. It's just really your opinion. Do you think that? What do you think of the storyline? Is it fabricated like a movie script, or do you think it's something that's actually real and just kind of fell into place kind of thing? Or did someone say, hey, we want generated our sales? And that's kind of the extent of the rigging. I think it's not really, they're not like selling games where the Warriors are going to go. They're not. I mean, it's also a great story. The Warriors won 27 in a row, but as I discussed previously, they haven't really played anyone. So I don't know. I kind of want to know what you guys think. I don't believe the NBA is rigged. I think it's more of a storyline thing, like I said, with kind of trying to make it relatable to people while the NBA or NFL is fading out. So I guess we'll see in the upcoming years what's going to happen and if they ever like expose themselves too far unintentionally. It's going to be really interesting to follow this, and I might do a little follow-up in the future. We'll see. So the other topic I alluded to was, or I never really said it, but I kind of tried to allude to it. I don't know how good of a job I did. You guys can tell me in the comments. But what I was talking about was our sports, I guess it'd be athletes more than players, but are athletes becoming more soft now than they have been in the past? And I believe so, honestly, as I know that, like, coming from high school, I played all 3 sports in high school: football, basketball, and baseball. And I'm blessed to play college baseball now, and I'm seeing a lot of guys like in the culture now. How I see it, I'm gonna go to culture first, and then talk about how it relates back to athletics and stuff. I see a lot of people culturally be like, I don't really want to do this. I don't really want to try hard. They have a bunch of stuff gifted to them, and you know what I'm talking about, kind of like. And I don't really want to bring up politics, but more of like the how Obama rose the unemployment money and cap and all that stuff, so more people were willing to just not have a job, and that's kind of a bad thing. But it's more of like people aren't really if something if you can okay. So I guess my analogy here before I talk about athletes is, would you rather have $30,000 a year handed to you to sit on a couch and watch TV or watch internet, or like just basically be a bum or a college student kind of thing, but without the college? Just like, would you have $30,000 just to basically not do anything, or would you rather have 80, 100, a bunch, like at least 2 to 3, 4 more money than that, going into an actual job, doing work and doing something for an 8 to 5 job? And as I see it nowadays, I think it's more of the first one, where there's more people willing to sit and wait and wait and wait and just do nothing and get rewarded for it. And how I relate this back to athletics is, because I think more athletes are getting soft now, especially at the younger levels. You see, I'm going to start at the younger level, and then I'll relate the economic thing I said back to it. And at the younger level, you see the players have the. I've seen it more recently because I was an umpire and a coach and all that stuff, and I didn't coach young enough for this. But you see, like a baseball, like t-ball and flag football, and I guess really young basketball, like I'm talking young elementary school, are rewarded with a kind of like they're rewarded with something like everyone gets a participation trophy, and that's not a bad deal. But I mean, the trophy is, but I'd say like give them all like a popsicle or something, give them all candy or something. You don't get everyone gets a medal kind of thing, and that's the kind of culture we're getting to. But what I'm going to focus on is that people aren't really keeping score, and everyone's like the parents are telling everyone that they're the best. And what I see with that, because I see that a lot really younger ages, so elementary and even into middle school a little bit, is like when parents say that that their kid's the best, they're like, they think that the coaches care. I guess is the best way to say that. The coaches care, and they kind of, I don't really know how to put that, is like that that they think the coaches care, so like their kid deserves to play kind of thing. And at younger ages like that, so like in middle school and basically all through elementary and into middle school, 6th or 7th grade, it should kind of start being weeded out a little bit. But everyone should play. You should find out the abilities of each kid, what they're good at, how they can get better at it, and all that stuff. I think that's a great thing. But more of what I was trying to think about was with the everyone gets a trophy thing, you kind of get, and as well as my kid's the best in the world, and telling the kid that, is that these kids don't really think about trying to get better at their sport or get better at anything, and that's kind of concerning to me, and that's where my thought process is of these athletes becoming soft. And I'm looking at it at the high school level, and I'm just recently graduated. I graduated 2 years ago, so I'm moderately fresh at this, and moderately fresh out of high school, I should say. And as I think about it, you have the star athletes, the Christian McCaffrey, who's like everyone knows, like I guess McCaffrey's a bad example. I heard he's a great guy and all that stuff. I don't want to trash on him, but you have the one kid on there on the team. He's like the star. Let's call him Tom, and he knows, like, let's say a football example. He's the quarterback. He throws. He's the best. He's one of the better guys in the nation. In the not nation, in the district, conference, whatever you want to call it, and everyone knows about how dangerous he is. He can score on any play. He can do about anything and all that. Well, I can say personally from experience in high school, we had one of those kids who was the best in the world and all that stuff. Best quarterback ever, best wide receiver ever, whatever you wanted to say. And like he thought he was like the best thing since sliced bread. And you guys, I'm assuming everyone's had someone like that before. But what I mean by this is, like, in practice they kind of are pampered a little bit, and it's not really a coach's thing. I mean, it started that way with the quarterbacks not getting hit, and I completely understand that, and wide receivers and all, like the playmakers not getting hit, and I completely understand that you don't want them hurt. Understandable. But like I always like to make myself better and try and make my teammates better in high school, and with that you kind of have to work hard in practice, kind of give each other a challenge. And I know when I was a senior and I was just getting on the start to be a starter, after all the work I put in, I had one of my friends, and he was one of the best players I've met. He's one of the best dudes I've met. Hopefully he gets into some higher D1 school, and he challenged me every time. He watched enough film to know that some kids, like certain kid cuts into the left and certain kids go out to the right, some bull rush, what have you, and I thoroughly enjoy that. I'm not like, that made me better. It made me prepared for that. But where I'm going with this is those kids that are like the star quarterback, star wide receiver, star running back, or whatever, they kind of like don't even try, like just make this easy for me kind of thing. And if they have that mentality in high school, which I know a couple of kids in my school that did, and they're kind of the I'm better than everyone jock types, and if they have that in high school, they're obviously going to transfer that to college, where it just gets a little bit bigger, because they're getting recruited. They're getting they're getting recruited. That's where it all kind of boils over, is where you have the college coach be like, hey, you're one of the best quarterbacks I've ever seen, wide receiver, running back I've ever seen, whatever they are. Be like, hey, I want you to come to my school because we're going to make you better. We're going to get you to the NFL. We're going to get you to the MLB, NBA, what have you. Whatever sport they are. It doesn't really matter. All sports are about the same, at least if they're a true team sport. And that'd be football, basketball, basically anything that's a continuous movement sport. And so like those, the coaches kind of, the college coaches kind of impede this, or start this, not impede it. And it really starts off with them being like, oh, hey, you're the best thing I've ever seen. I want you at my school. They're doing their usual pitch, and everyone knows the pitch. Well, I mean, you don't know it if you haven't been recruited, but most of them are like, hey, we want you here. You're the best thing ever. We're giving you a full ride. We think you're deserving to play anywhere in the nation, but our school's the best because we're better than them. We like you more. You trash on the other school, all that stuff. And obviously, that's a recruiting tactic. You can do what you want. But if those kids get hyped up like that, and then they go into the NFL, and then they get kind of, because these are still kids, they're like probably about 19 to 21, 22 when they first come in. It really depends on when they get in, and what sport, obviously, too. And sticking with the NFL for just a moment, you get those guys that are coming up in the whole safe space era where you can't really say anything bad, you can't really hurt them, you can't really basically breathe on them without getting hurt, and or without making them offended and all that stuff. And Then you have these older guys that are in like their 30s. A little bit, they're basically, what I'm saying is older and more mature, and they're like, "Oh, you were a high school kid or you were a star in high school. I don't really care." Boom, knock them, and that kind of humbles them, and that's where it kind of starts getting soft because they still think in their mind they're like, "Oh, well, my college coach said I was this, so I'm still that," and then they still get humbled by this, and you see all the, and that's kind of where the flags, staying with the football still, that's where like a lot of the flags come from, is you don't want them really getting hurt or anything. Obviously, that's the first key, but it's a lot of pansy stuff too. I don't really want to say that, but it's a lot of pansy stuff where it's like little small stuff, like even just like with the defenders, you touch them after 5 yards and it's an impediment of process or whatever, and that's kind of stupid. And then you see this more in the NBA with the cheap, or not cheap fouls, but like little, not really anything fouls, like armbar, or like when you swipe at the ball and you hit their arm barely and they call it a foul kind of thing. So you see that more, it's more prevalent in the NBA, and I really don't like it. It just shows that, like, if you're gonna, kind of like makes me think that they're gonna whine and moan until they get their way, and that's what I'm kind of seeing, especially with the NBA, and I've seen a lot more with wide receivers in the NFL too. They kind of run up to the ref and say, "Oh," or they like, you can see it more with the NBA without the face mask and stuff, where they get in their face and they start yelling, "Oh, why does this happen? Where's the foul? Where's this?" and all that stuff. And that kind of is where I say it's kind of over the line, where you're trying to tell a paid professional that you were in the right, and it just kind of is, it's really stupid to me, and people are just getting really soft and in the safe space stuff, and it's more of just the culture now is to be of, if you say something that someone doesn't agree with, that defends them, and they can go to their safe space, and that's bullying if you don't. If they don't agree with it and it makes them feel bad, it's kind of bullying. But I don't really know. It's it's getting really old to me, at least, and I'm seeing it at all levels where there's people that are demanding that, since they're their mom, basically. What I'm gonna end this on is, I'm seeing it at all levels where their mom was like, they're basically, their mom saying that they're the best things since sliced bread, and no one can tell them that they're not, so they're believing it, and there's nothing you can do about it because that's what they believe, because no one can say anything different. So if that doesn't get fixed, none of this superstar diva kind of stuff gets fixed either, and you're just going to see more and more stupid, unnecessary fouls in sports dying out altogether, and I don't think anyone wants to see that. So in a little bit of MLB news, I guess it's not really news, but a little bit of a topic of the MLB, because I haven't really done much on it because it's the off season and there's really not much going on. A couple of free agents signed recently in Justin Upton and Cespedes, Yoenis Cespedes, I think that's how you pronounce it. And the reason I bring that up is because they were part of a new rule for the, well, semi-new rule. It's called the arbitration or restricted free agency rule, and it's kind of, it hurts a lot of people with that. Not just the player, because, well, before I get into that, let me explain how this works. So a player, if they have, so there's two types of free agents in the MLB. There's unrestricted, who are just normal, they can sign with anyone, no restrictions, nothing like that. And then there's a restricted free agents, which are kind of interesting because the team that signed them, or so the team that has them, so like, for example, I'm from Colorado, so I'm going to use the Rockies for example. Let's say, oh, he's gone. Carlos Gonzalez is eligible for restricted free agency and a free agent. It happens the same year. And how restricted free agency works is that after a certain amount of years, it kind of comes into effect where they become a free agent, but not quite. And it's called arbitration. and they're kind of a restricted free agent. And how it works is the team that owns them. So sticking with the Cargo and the Rockies thing. So let's say it's the off season next year. Cargo's a free agent. I'm doing air quotes, free agent, and so he's about to become a free agent. Like his contract's up. The Rockies can offer him a 1-year deal basically, and it's the same dollar value. It's like the average salary of everyone in the MLB. I'm not quite sure how that part works of it, but for this year, for example, it was 15.8, and so you can offer it to any of your free agents. It's a 1-year deal for a certain amount of money, and what it basically does is if they can either choose to accept it or reject it. If they accept it, they get that 1-year deal, 15 mil. You can negotiate it. It's kind of like offer them a 1-year deal. Kind of like the franchise tag in the NFL, but you can use it on more than one person. And so how it works is you offer them that, they can accept it, they get the 1-year deal for I think I said 15.8 million, or they could reject it. And if they reject it, they still have it. They don't have it on the table, but they can negotiate they're basically a restricted free agent is what they turn into. And I think it's only been like 4 people have ever accepted it, and they all happened this year because it's like what it is. Okay, so how MLB teams use it is they attach it to their obviously really good players. So like Zach Greinke got it this year, and a bunch of other people got it. But that's the main way they use it. Well, kind of. That was the purpose of it, is you give it to the really good guys that are worth more, but they can sign it for that 1 year, get more the next year, or they can get some compensation, which I'll talk about in just a moment. But how they also use it is they give it to the lower level, I guess, free agents, and they give it to those lower levels that are. It's 15 million, so it's a lot of money, but they're like. Let's say that these teams think that they're worth 8 million, but they know that the player thinks they're worth more than 15 million. So the player can just reject it. And then, so when it's rejected, a player is free to sign with anyone, like I said. But what it turns into is that whatever team that player signs with has to give their first round pick to the other team. And how it's not really like a straight up trade kind of thing, but what it does is they lose theirs, and then that team that had him in the first place, so like the Rockies, gain a compensatory pick at the end of the first round. And so let's say Carlos Gonzalez gets signed by the Cubs, for example, just to throw a team out there, not saying anything. But so let's say stepping back just a minute, Gonzalez was a Rocky, got offered the restricted free agent qualifying offer, and then he proceeded to say, no, I don't want that. So he turned down $15 million, a year and $15 million on the table, said, no, I'm good, Colorado, I'm going to go look. Looks around for a little bit, and then talks to the Cubs and it's like, hey, the Cubs say, hey, we want you. Cargo's like, hey, I'll take some money. So they just throw down a deal of 5-year, I guess that's 180 million or 150 million for, so 30 million a year basically. I'll just stay that. So the Cubs say, okay, we'll give you 30 million a year for 5 years. Here you go. Cargo signs that, and so he becomes a Cub. The Cubs have a first round pick. Not anymore. They did. So they lost it because they signed Carlos Gonzalez, and the Rockies gained a compensatory pick. And I mean, the Cubs will never do that. It's just the first team that came to my mind because I was looking around, I saw something blue, and I thought Cubs immediately. But anyways, so the Cubs lose their pick and the Rockies gain an extra pick. And how that kind of ties into is that's the best way for people to do that, is to sign or offer it to their higher end players like Cargo and Greinke and all that. But what teams have started to do, because this only started 2 years ago, so 2013 I believe is the first year, maybe it was 14 that it started. But what teams have started to do is say, For example, I'll use the example from last year. Stephen Drew. I don't remember what team he was on. I believe he was on the Diamondbacks, but he was offered the qualifying offer, said no, and then was later. So he said no. He was looking for offers and all that. No one really wanted to sign him because of the first-round draft pick that they had to give away. And then later, I think it was like in May or June, and he finally signed with the Red Sox, but to something he really didn't want to. And he was just kind of stuck in no man's land from January to June because of the draft pick. And kind of where I was going with this is, who does this really... Well, obviously it's a new thing. The qualifying offer thing is completely new and all that. And I'm not really going to say it's bad or good. And, I mean, with the 4 people finally accepting it this year, it's obviously not a terrible thing because those players are getting paid, and it might start making teams rethink of who they give it to. It might start taking players who won't usually get that money in free agency say, hey, I'll take 15 mil for a year, here you go, and sign it. But so that's kind of a good thing about it. But it makes, like I said, it makes people think, it makes the teams think, and the players think, and all that. But who does it really hurt? A lot of people will say, oh, it hurts the teams, first off, and it does. You got the team that signs it, or signs the player losing a draft pick, and a lot of these teams built through the draft now instead of trying to sign free agents like that. And obviously it does hurt teams. But there's also, it hurts the other team as well because they're losing their star player. Now obviously if it's like another guy that's not really their star, like their Cargo or their I can't think of it, like Greinke, that's who his name I blanked on. But if it's not like their Greinke or Cargo, they're not really losing a lot. If they don't really mean anything to the team, they're just trying to get a draft pick. And that's kind of where it starts to hurt the player a little bit, is because say you have a guy who's, I'll use MLB The Show's rankings for example, or like video game rankings. So Cargo and Greinke are usually in the 90s, so they're really good. Obviously that 90 to 100, 90 to 99 is really good. Say you got a guy that's like a 73, 74, 75, just a straight up average player on the game, and say they translate that to real life, so he's technically like an average player, so he's a 75 overall, and you're like, oh, I don't like, he's useful, I'd like to keep him on the team, but it's not necessary, so I'm going to give him this offer and maybe I can get a draft pick back. So that player who's not really worth the 15 mil says, well, the player says no, I'm going to decline it, but he doesn't really, because he thinks he's worth a little bit more than the 15, the amount of money, so I'll just leave it at that. And so he says, yeah, I can probably get a little bit more than that. And he goes and searches for offers, and the teams really start shying away from him at the beginning. He's like, oh, it's just the beginning. And we get a little bit toward January, he's starting to get worried and not really signed yet, so he's getting a little bit worried. Just because when you sign him, you have to give up your draft pick, and a lot of teams don't want to do that. And then you get to February, same thing, gets a little more worried. March, April, still doesn't have a contract, has an offer, but would be a minor league player or something like that. He doesn't really want to go to that team. So we're going to call it late April, early May, he finally says, I'll accept any offer, and the teams are like, we don't really care because we have the players we want. And this guy basically turns into an injury signee. So let's say he's a shortstop and someone breaks their leg and is out for the year, tears their ACL or whatever, they can sign him to a 1-year deal and give up that pick just to have the immediate stuff. And it basically, what I'm getting around to is that it hurts not just the teams, but it also hurts the players because they're having to give up a lot of their, like, they're not going to be on a team. They don't know if they'll ever play in the MLB again, or at least that year, because they'll have that whole October now till May off, and not really under anyone's contract, not even under anyone's workout guidelines. They're doing their own thing, kind of stuff, and they don't know if they're going to lose their sharpness or edge or whatever. So I think that qualifying offer is a bad thing It's got good parts, got good ideas, but it's a bad thing in general just because of how bad it kind of affects the all the players in the league and the teams as well. So it just hurts the growth of teams, and it keeps the rich getting richer if they start signing players like that, where they could just be like, hey, you want to come play for us for 300 mil, and then a couple years later they're like, we don't really want you anymore, you're not that good, here's a qualifying offer, oh, you're rejecting it, sweet. And they just take draft picks from other guys, and that's kind of where the parity of it comes in, is that there isn't really any with that. So I guess we'll see if MLB ever tries to change it or adapt it or whatever. So, but I guess that's really about it. Thanks for listening to the Ryno Sports Talk podcast. I really enjoyed this one just because of the players becoming, or athletes becoming soft, and the is the NBA rigged one. I know I didn't really expand on it kind of how I wanted to, but I guess it's still, I don't really know what to think about it. I know it's not rigged, but this is kind of an interesting topic because it's controversial enough, but I tried my best at that one, and I didn't really want to go too controversial with it. And yeah, so thanks again for listening to the Ryno Sports Talk podcast, the episode 7 this week, and I will have a Super Bowl, I guess, preview coming up sometime this week, either Wednesday or Thursday. So don't forget to watch the Pro Bowl because it's so much cool. It's really going to be super boring unless they do what I said. So if you haven't read that one, link in the description. I thought it was a really good piece. So yeah, thanks again for listening. If you like this, hit like, subscribe if you are new, and like sports talk, and leave a comment about what you should talk about next. So see you later.